So we've learned in this section how to work with the CSS property position. And that property allows us to do layout type stuff because we could take things, elements, blocks, whatever you want to call them, containers, right? You could take those and you could position them anywhere on the page. And we learned that one of the values we could set to the CSS position property is fixed. And so when you set like an element to position fixed, then that is removed from the normal flow of the document, and you could fix that element anywhere on the viewport, and it's going to stay in that one spot, and everything else is going to slide under it. So that's position fixed. The next one we learned was position relative. And the most important thing about position relative is relative to itself. And so that's both in and out of the document flow at the same time. It's in the document flow because space where it used to be is maintained. It's out of the document flow because then you could use top, right, bottom, left, those CSS properties to position your element relative to where it used to be, position it somewhere else, and it will just go over the top of everything else to go wherever you tell it to go. The next one was position absolute. And position absolute is in relationship to some other element. And so it looks up the DOM, all that HTML is nested, looks up the DOM until it finds another element that has some sort of position property set. It's just the rules. And then it will position itself off of in relationship to that element. So you often see something like position absolute this element, and then you go up the DOM a little bit, and then position relative this one, and you don't do any kind of positioning with it. But this one's just position relative, so this one can position itself in relationship to this one. If you don't find an element up the DOM that has position property set, right, when you have a position absolute and you're walking up the DOM, you don't find anything that has a position property set, then this one positions itself off of HTML. So that's position absolute. And then finally we saw position static, which just means if I want to override, that's kind of like the default of everything is just statically positioned. And if I want to override a position, like I've set a relative, an absolute, or a fixed, and later in my CSS I want to overwrite that, then I would use position static. So we learned about position, and then we also learned about top, right, bottom, and left, those CSS properties, and the different values we could set on all of them. You could see them right here. Maybe you've already been looking at that when I edited this. This would be a good thing to be looking at. And then we also, in this section, we saw layout essentials. And we got access to this great document right here, which students have found super helpful to print out, tape to your wall next to your desk so that when you're working, you quickly just glance and see all of the different tools we use for layout. And, you know, you could use the right tool for the right thing for what you're wanting to achieve. Because when you're sitting there and you're like, okay, now how do I make this happen? Looking at a document like that is really helpful. What else did we get in this one? We saw the taco shop and we did some hands-on examples. And as you scroll down our list of all the HTML elements we've learned so far and tag attributes and then all the CSS properties we've learned so far, you're going to notice we have some new properties here in green. And those new properties are the position property, the top, right, bottom, and left. And I left in the values here, fixed, relative, absolute, and static. I haven't been putting in, you know, a lot of values, but I did leave these values in just because they really speak to what you could do with position. All right, so that's it. That's our review. I need to write a description. I need to put in the lecture number there. And then this document will continue to be built well for you to reference. In the next section, we're going to learn about float. And you need to know float. And it's like something that, you know, increasingly you do not use for layout, though it's still cool for, like, you know, getting text to wrap around a picture. So we'll see float in the next video.